All right, we will call to order the regular council meeting for the town of St. Andrews for Monday, May 4th. The recording of attendance, I will note all members of council are present, with Councillor Blanchard being online. And I do want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotomagati people. The agenda before us tonight, again, can we have a mover to accept the agenda as presented? Sorry, hang on one second.
Sorry to interrupt. We do need to strike an item. Item 3 under Portfolio 5, Planning and Community Development Committee. After some further investigation today, we found out this item is not under our jurisdiction, so we would want to strike that tonight. It's the encroachment request.
Okay. Do we need an amendment for that? Yes.
Yeah, the bottom of page 5. We would just
We'll just strike it before
move
we approve the agenda.
move to accept the agenda with the removal of that item.
Okay. So can we have a mover to accept the agenda with the subtraction of that item? Councillor Heenan, seconder. Councillor Gumashell, all those in favor?
Aye.
That is everyone. I just voted myself. Force of habit. Any disclosure of conflict of interest this evening? Seeing none.
I got one, Steve, actually.
Oh,
sorry.
Councillor Blanchard.
Councillor Neal, sorry. Yeah, on item PCD 260505, that was the encroachment request. Was that the one that was stricken? I thought I heard item.
Yes.
That was the one that was stricken. Okay, I had it.
Yeah.
I had it backwards and not 5-3. It was 3-5. So okay, if that's been stricken, then I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no conflicts of interest, we will move into the presentations. We have one presentation tonight from St. Andrews Civic Trust, which I believe will be Ken Bowman speaking.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So Ken Beaubien, I'm at 54 Princess Royal, and I'm the treasurer of the St. Andrews Civic Trust. Just wanted to offer a couple of remarks, kind of contextual remarks for the courthouse project. Just as kind of like a reminder of what we did prior to kind of getting to this point on the courthouse project. We did kind of extensive consultation process over a 12-month period, kind of leading into the proposals. We took ideas from the community, assembled that idea, which included the Visitor Information Center being located at the courthouse. So that was part of the original kind of vision piece, which is important to kind of note. So we did have like in-person consultations, online consultations, event consultations, presentation at the courthouse. So it was, in my opinion, a very extensive process that we did. And then the ideas were all voted on by the community. So these weren't ideas that the Civic Trust just put together. This was ideas that were created by the community and then packaged by the Civic Trust. So one of the things that we had looked at when we did that packaging was viability. So, how do we make the courthouse a viable project economically and fiscally? And one of the ideas with the Visitor Information Center, it was that it would give us access to ACOA grants. So just to kind of emphasize that a lot of the ideas that were presented there and the thinking behind it was really an integrated business plan. So if you start considering options and then cutting parts of it, it does impact the entirety of the vision and the business planning and access to the funds and grants that made it a more sustainable model. So I just want to kind of share that insight in terms of how we constructed the project. The other piece too, that we had thought we were kind of at the point of negotiating the transfer agreement as well. So in our minds, the premise and the vision was agreed upon. And then basically it was to work through the details of the transfer agreement, like would there be limitations? How would we create early sustainability as we transition to grants and contributions and revenue for the courthouse? But when we start discussing about reconsulting on aspects of the project that would impact that entirety of the vision piece, you are risking the whole project. I mean, that's just to emphasize from the Civic Trust point of view, we wouldn't be supporting more consultations. Like we wouldn't be involved in that part. So certainly I understand it's the discretion of council, the town, and everyone else. We don't own the courthouse. But just from our perspective is we would not be investing more time in consultations. And depending on what the outcome of those consultations are, it could potentially change the whole business model. So if it does come back and we say, look, we don't want this there, we don't want that, we don't want this happening, then we got to revisit it. So that does impact the transfer agreement, and it does impact what was proposed as a business model. So I just want to share that perspective from the Civic Trust. And I just also wanted to remind everyone too that this property is zoned institutional. So it already has zoning for parking activity. It's been a functioning courthouse for well over 100 years. It's had community events for well over 100 years. It's had traffic. The town has traffic. Nobody really likes the bus problem. It's whether it's around the courthouse or somewhere else. It's a problem that needs to be solved, but it's not necessarily being created by having a visitor information center at the courthouse. It's a problem we'd have to all work together to try and solve, for example. So I just wanted to remind, it is zoned institutional. That does allow you to install parking. It's had a certain volume of traffic through its history. So that is a reality of what that property already is. And the other thing too is just around, it does impact this kind of circular effort on these types of projects in this community, impact the community organizations that are trying to make them a reality and the people that sit on the boards. So one of the impacts is you look at this, we spent 2.5 years. I would put the value in consulting services at probably 50 to 75K of free service. And then we feel a little bit like we get back to step one. And it's easily discouraging to people that sit on these boards. And the other thing too is like the average length of a volunteer is 4 years in an organization. So when the life to even launch a project is 2, 3, 4 years, the group of people that conceive it are probably not around to execute it. So there is a problem when you start to look at the life cycle management of some of these projects and how kind of long it can take and how the consulting can push you into a time period that makes it hard to maintain a volunteer group to actually deliver it. So that's just kind of another word of caution. I think the other thing too is I think a reasonable expectation as part of a transfer agreement is there would be consultation on how some of these parts would function or work within the project of the courthouse. For example, let's just say we were to go ahead with the garden part. I mean, there's a number of organizations that you would expect Civic Trust to engage on that type of conversation and have ideas put forward to build as part of that. But it's not to kind of undo the whole vision for the project. So I guess, the scale of consultation and purpose is important to be defined at the front end. So then people know what they're getting into and what the expectations are as it moves forward. And just the last part too, just to emphasize, I think in the last 6 months, we're really seeing a bit of a crisis in New Brunswick on a variety of asset classes, cultural asset, like you see Sheriff Andrews House. There's been the home in St. Stephen that the board of directors has basically said we're out of money. The business model doesn't work. You've seen Cape Enrage close down because the arrangement with the province doesn't work. So when you think about this, the problem in New Brunswick is the business models aren't working, right? So the business models set up to help run these entities, whether they're cultural asset, a social asset, it's kind of unraveling. So it's really important to think through how we create a sustainable model and how that works. We felt the original proposal and that business model was a sustainable model. And I would just caution that major changes to it changes that. So, and maybe that's okay, but it's just a word of caution that it does, as you pick pieces apart on it, it does risk unraveling the entirety of the model. And we felt that was kind of a big part of it. It was sustainable. And I think too, the other part of this is the visitor information center, you can kind of think as a pamphlet pickup, but really what we are envisioning is more of a starting point for an experience in St. Andrews. Could there be theater companies? Could there be courtroom reenactments? Could there be, archival and historical material presented at the courthouse? That was kind of all part of it. So yes, visitor information center, but really kind of a launching point and place of community. So it was that, but more in terms of the vision. So we just wanted to share those thoughts just in the context and what we were thinking behind it, as council further considers the visitor information center. Thank you.
Town again does truly appreciate. Right. Does appreciate the work that you and the board have put into Civic Trust and the courthouse and whatnot. So thank you very much for that. Okay, moving along, we'll get to the approval of the minutes from the previous meetings. Try and go through them quickly. The first one being the minutes of the 26/04/07 special council meeting of Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Can I have a mover for those minutes? Councillor Heenan, seconder. Councillor Gumichel, all those in favor? Aye, that's everyone. Second is the minutes of the regular council meeting of Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Can I have a mover for those? Councillor Bennett, seconder. Councillor Gumichel, thank you. All those in favor? All right. Third will be the minutes of the 26/04/13 staff-led council meeting of Monday, April 13th, 2026. Can I have a mover for those minutes? Councillor Harland and Councillor Heenan, all those in favor? Aye, that's everyone. The minutes of the 26/04/19 emergency council meeting of Sunday, April 19th, 2026. Can I have a mover of those minutes? Councillor Bennett, seconder. Councillor Gumichel, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Everyone again. And lastly, the minutes of the 26/04/27 special council meeting of Monday, April 27th, 2026. Do I have a mover for those minutes, please? Councillor Heenan and Councillor Gumichel, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Perfect.
Abstain on that one, Deputy Mayor or Acting Mayor, Councillor Neil. We're calling you
Thank
these
you,
days.
Councillor Blanchard.
Yeah, thanks, whatever we're calling you these days.
Okay, so that's an abstention from Councillor Blanchard and Bennett. They weren't present. Thank you. Any correspondence, communication there, Mac?
The
Sorry.
correspondence register for council items is included, the table there. There's also two letters, one letter from Explore St. Andrews and one letter from St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Those are all in your package, Council. And takes us to staff reports. Did CAO Spear submit one?
He did not. He's been on vacation for a couple weeks, and today he was called away for a family emergency just after lunch.
Okay, so and we'll just take a motion to accept the council reports or the staff reports as accepted. Councillor Heenan, a seconder. Councillor Gumichel, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, so that takes us to the introduction and consideration passing of bylaws and motions. First being Finance and Administration Committee. I think that is the Community Assistance Grants.
Page 90.
Grants. I don't have it right in front of me.
Page 90. Page 90, Councillor Heenan. Yeah.
Who's up? I think this is Councillor Heenan, is it not?
It is, Your Worship.
It's all yours.
Thank you, Council, Your Worship, everyone. Reference number FA 260438, Community Assistance Grants for 2026. The town has received 12 applications for the Community Assistance Grant for 2026. Council has a budget of $56,000 for this year. Applications were reviewed on Thursday, April the 9th by an ad hoc committee of council, and recommendations are provided to council in an attached document as follows. Anglophone School District South, $400. Charlotte County Archives, $2,500. Sales St. Andrews, $2,500. St. Andrews and Area Open Door Food Program, $750. St. Andrews Arts Council, $1,500. St. Croix Chamber Orchestra, $1,500. Sunbury Shores, $5,000. Katie's Cove, Inc., $15,000. Winter Warmer Festival, $500. Charlotte County alternate transportation, 3,000, and we had two late submissions. One is the Compassionate Grief Center requesting 2,000, and St. Andrews Pickleball requesting $500. So this comes to a total of $35,150, including the add-ons. And the mission, Your Worship, is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews awards the following community assistant grants for 2026 at a total of $35,150. They include the Anglophone School District South 400, Charlotte County Archives 2,500, Sales St. Andrews 2,500, St. Andrews and Area Open Door Food Program $750, St. Andrews Arts Council $1,500, St. Croix Chamber Orchestra $1,500, Sunbury Shores $5,000, Katie's Cove $15,000, Winter Warmer Festival $500, Charlotte County Alternate Transportation $3,000, Compassionate Grief Center $2,000, and Pickleball Association $500. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Harland. Is there any discussion, council, questions? Councillor Blanchard.
Just a friendly amendment in my package. It says assistant grants for 2025 and not 2026. I'm assuming we can make a friendly amendment to correct that, or does it not read the same in everyone else's package?
I rolled right through it and put 2026, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, council? Councillor Harland.
Just a comment. I think that each year when we come to this place where we're looking at community assistance grants, it's just a reminder of the incredible amount of organizations and services that we have in this community, and the amount of time volunteers put in to these organizations. And I just want to recognize that and thank all of the volunteers for all of these organizations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Harland. There's no other questions? We will call the question. All those in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Nope. That has passed. Councillor Heenan.
Thank
we've
you.
got the next one.
Thank you. FA 260437, Southwest Business Summit donation for 2026. A request for sponsorship of the 2026 Southwest Business Summit. This annual event will occur on May the 27th, 28th of 2026. The summit brings business owners, employers, and professional and economic development partners from across New Brunswick and the region. An opening reception will be held at the Huntsman Fundy Discovery Aquarium, and a day of speakers, workshops, and evening gala at the Algonquin Resort. This year's keynote speaker will be Miss Arlene Dickinson. Council sponsored the event with a donation of $2,500 in 2025 with monies from the Tourism Accommodation Levy. And the motion and action is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews approves a sponsorship of $2,500 from the Tourism Accommodation Levy Development Fund towards the 2026 Southwest Business Summit occurring on May the 27th and 28th, 2026 at the Algonquin Resort. I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. I'll ask for a seconder. Councillor Harland. Any comments, questions on this one, council? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. All right, council. That takes us to Public Works and Public Safety. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Reference number PWPS 260426. Subject, Water Street sidewalk replacement. And the background reads, a portion of the sidewalk on Water Street from Princess Royal to Patrick Street requires replacement. The previous installation for this area was completed with asphalt, which is lower cost, but has a life of about 20 years. A concrete sidewalk lifetime is up to 40 years. Concrete sidewalk require unique certification and contractor options are limited. 3 quotes were obtained by the operations manager, which are attached with the following results pre-HST. High Rock Construction came in at 129,600. Funded Contractors Limited came in at 163,996, and Olympian Slip Form came in at 144,000 even. After review of the quotes, staff are satisfied that the proposal for the lowest bidder, High Rock Construction, meets the qualification for the project. The budget for this in the 2026 was 160,000. So the motion reads that the council of the town of St. Andrews awards the sidewalk replacement project for Water Street from Princess Royal to Patrick Street to High Rock Construction in the amount of $129,600 before HST, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Heenan. Any discussion on this one, council? Again, we'll just, sorry, go ahead.
If I may, Councillor Neal, just from previous discussion, I just wanted to clear up a couple things for council. All 3 of these bids are concrete. None of them are asphalt. One of them
Okay.
actually was going to, the other question was whether they were all straight quotes. The first and third quote are straight quotes. The second quote does depend on requiring services from a subcontractor, and those materials could flux. So just wanted to put those
Okay.
facts out there for you.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments, council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay. On to the second one, Councillor Bennett, please.
Thanks again. Reference number PWPS 260427, subject bylaw 26-01, noise bylaw, third and final reading. And the background reads, council gave leave for first reading of the proposed noise bylaw updated on March 16 regular council meeting and second reading on April 7th. Staff have not received any comments or concerns regarding the proposed bylaw. Staff recommend council grant leave for third and final reading. Upon council's approval, staff will order the recommended equipment for measuring decibel levels, 1 decibel meter and caliber set for the bylaw enforcement officer, and 1 set for the St. Andrews RCMP detachment. And the motion for this reads that the council of the town of St. Andrews grant leave for third and final reading of bylaw 26-01, noise bylaw, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. We have a seconder. Councillor Harland. Are there any comments or questions on this one, council? Councillor Weir.
Do we have any idea what these 2 meters are going to cost?
Yes,
Um,
it may not
I'm gonna
be
leave
in
that to
this
the clerk.
package, but it would have been in the first couple. I can pull it up for us real quick here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was in the last package, wasn't it?
So it's price before tax per kit is $455.95.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Seeing none? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, so I will read this one by title only, Mr. McKinnon. This is bylaw number 26-01, a bylaw regarding noise and nuisance for the town of St. Andrews, be it enacted by the council for the town of St. Andrews under the authority vested in it by the Local Governance Act as follows. And that will be read on the third reading on May 4th, 2026. Okay. Back to you, Councillor Bennett, I believe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reference number PWPS 260516, subject sidewalk machine quote results. And the background reads, the operation manager has completed a quote request through Canoe Procurement for a sidewalk machine. This machine is used primarily for snow removal and sweeping, as well as other maintenance needs. 2 vendors were able to submit quotes through Canoe with the following results. Saunders Equipment Limited in Fredericton, New Brunswick came in with a 2026 trackless MT7 articulated municipal tractor at a cost of $263,271 plus HST. And Atlantic Coastal Equipment from Truro, Nova Scotia came in with a McLean MV6 sidewalk tractor at $271,716.64 plus HST. Notes from the operation manager are included in the package. The amount of $280,000 was budgeted for purchase of a sidewalk machine. Staff recommended purchase of the trackless machine as the town has currently owns one, and both machines would use the same parts, simplifying maintenance and operation. So the action and motion reads that the council of the town of St. Andrews authorize the purchase of a 2026 trackless MT7 articulated municipal tractor through Saunders Equipment Limited at a cost of $263,271 plus HST as shown on the quote dated April 23rd, 2026, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. We have a seconder, Councillor Heenan. Again, always nice when these come in under budget. Any comments, Council? Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to see that an NB firm will be getting this contract. It's nice to keep, if we can, our business local, and Fredericton for this is probably as local as it's going to get. So I'm very pleased indeed that we have it within the province. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Heenan. Any other comments, questions, concerns, Council? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, that takes us to Economic Development, Business and Culture. Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is reference number EBC 260411, Island Quest lease transfer. The owners of Island Quest Marine Limited are in the process of selling their business and building. They have requested a transfer of the lease to the new owner and permission to sublease to a new operator as provided for in Section 6 of the lease, who will be running the tour business. The lease for a portion of PID 151000662 and 1333954 with a land area of approximately 1,640 square feet lying and being in the vicinity of the municipal wharf was renewed in October 2024. The renewal extended the lease for 5 years beginning April 1st, 2025. And the first motion is that the council for the town of St. Andrews transfer the lease dated October 2nd, 2024 to Salt Shore Properties Limited. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. We have a seconder, Councillor Bennett. Thank you. Again, just a little clarification. I believe this is basically a transfer of the lease from one family member to the other. My understanding is the business will continue to operate as it is right now. Any other questions, Council? Councillor Weir?
Is this an assignment of the lease or an entirely new lease?
It's a reassignment. The lease itself doesn't change.
So it's an assignment rather than a transfer.
The motion was provided to us by our lawyer. That's why we have the wording that we have.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All right, everyone, anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, so the second motion, Councillor Weir.
That the Council of the Town of St. Andrews approve a sublease of the property to Island Quest Marine Limited and to provide confirmation of such in writing to Salt Shore Properties Limited in accordance with Section 6 of the original lease. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Seconder? Councillor Harland? Any comments on this portion of the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is everyone? Thank you, Councillor Weir. I believe you've got the next one as well.
And the next one is EBC 260412. Food truck location exception by the Sea Beer Festival. Kingsbury Garden and Cura are planning the By the Sea Beer Festival from June 12th to June 14th. A request was received to allow Cura to host food trucks on the property lawn, 130 Prince of Wales Street, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday, June 13th. Schedule D of Bylaw 25-02, a bylaw regulating the licensing of peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks, limits the authorization operating locations for food trucks and does not include Cura. Staff recommends authorization of the Cura location for the specified date and time, conditional upon the applications and issuance of food truck licenses for the applicable operators. The motion reads that the Council for the Town of St. Andrews authorize the operation of food trucks at Kingsbury International Residence for the Arts, Cura, on Saturday, June 13th, 2026, between the hours of 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., and require each food truck operator to obtain a food truck license in accordance with Bylaw 25-02, a bylaw regulating the licensing of peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. We have a seconder for this. Councillor Heenan? Questions, Council? Councillor Heenan?
Yes, Your Worship, I just wanted to point out to the public that it's a 4 to 8 p.m., which I think is a very reasonable time for them to have the food truck. It does not go into the later hours of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Heenan. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? This passed. And back to you again, Councillor Weir.
Reference number EBC 260410. Agreement with Explore St. Andrews to operate the BIC at the courthouse. Explore St. Andrews has taken responsibility for operation of the Visitor Information Center in its role as service provider under Bylaw 23-01, Tourism Accommodation Levy Bylaw. After completion of a survey with the TALB participants and internal discussion, Explore identified the Charlotte County Courthouse as the ideal location for the Visitor Information Center. Although the town is in negotiations with the St. Andrews Civic Trust to transfer ownership of the courthouse, jail, and commons property, they remain current assets of the town. A lease agreement is provided for council's consideration to provide shared access to the courtroom and washroom facilities at the courthouse. Details include a term from May 1st, 2026 until October 31st, 2026, an option to renew the lease annually, a rent amount of $0, which council may amend prior to a vote to accept the agreement. Section 4.1. Explore has also requested improvements for parking and accessibility. The operations manager is awaiting a quote for council's consideration as a separate item. The motion reads that the council for the town of St. Andrews accepts the lease agreement with Explore St. Andrews for the courtroom and washroom facilities at the Charlotte County Courthouse for the purpose of operating a visitor information center beginning May 1st, 2026 through September 30th, 2026, with an option to renew annually at a rental cost of $0. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. I have a seconder for this. Councillor Gumichel. Okay, Council, so we've heard from Civic Trust tonight. We've also received letters, I believe, from Explore in the Chamber, as well as some concerned citizens. So I'm going to pass this to the clerk for a moment.
If I may, I just want to draw attention to another situation I have there. The background and the lease have a termination of the term on October 31st, 2026, where the motion ends on September 30th, 2026. I would recommend amending the motion to October 31st to give a 6-month lease. There was debate in the office as to what the best cutoff would be, and this the October 31st is where we landed, even though we'd started with September 30th.
Right. So I'll ask somebody to make that amendment. Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Heenan. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Bennett. All those in favor of the amendment? Thank you. Now back to the motion, Council. Councillor Weir.
I might as well speak on this. I found out more about this in the past week, in that it evidently was part of the proposal when the St. Andrews Civic Trust made their proposal to take over the facility. I don't recollect that being presented to council, but that's not to say it wasn't. And evidently the Civic Trust was consulted on the effects of the Visitor Information Center would have on the historic value of the property. And at last week, I did question, were there public consultations? St. Andrews Civic Trust advised tonight that there was rigorous public consultations. However, in my correspondence and telephone conversations with the people, or certain people living in the vicinity of the courthouse, they were not a party to any of those consultations, and were quite surprised to see this appear on the agenda for the council meeting. in the background information, it said there were options to renew annually. I think when one looks at the draft lease, it's options to renew twice annually for 2 additional terms. And problem with traffic congestion, I don't know whether anybody's dealt with it or not, but I guess my biggest concern is consultation with people in the area, neighbors to the courthouse or whatever. And regardless of what the zoning is, I think as a council, we have the responsibility to inform the citizens of what is happening in their area of town. And one could say, oh, that's their problem to find out. Well, I don't take that approach on it. I think we have to be proactive in advising them. And I've gotten 2 stories on, so I don't know. I just want to make sure it's done right. The other thing is I don't think council was given the full details of the proposal that was made by St. Andrew's Civic Trust, such that we could go into it in this amount of depth without it suddenly appearing before us as a motion. And my final comment is that we are currently putting together a cost of constructing a small parking lot and a ramp to give accessibility to the courthouse. We don't have the cost on that. So we would be entering this lease with an unknown. You know, we're going to lease it and we're agreeing to provide these improvements without knowing what the improvements are going to cost. And just from a business point of view, that seems somewhat, hate to use the word, irresponsible. Thank you.
So just to clarify that a little bit, again, thank you, Councillor Weir. But this portion of the motion is, again, just dealing with the lease for Civic Trust in the courthouse. There is a second part to this, which would be covering the parking area, which again will be separate from this, but I believe staff's recommendation was to reject that one once we get to it anyway. So, Mr. McKinnon, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say that we do have an estimate of the cost, and staff does has a recommendation when we get to that item
Okay,
in a
thank
couple
you.
places from here.
Councillor Harland.
Thank you. So over the past week, more information has become available and with greater clarity. For me, I think that the transfer agreement and the lease agreement make things a little muddy with respect to the Visitor Information Center being located at the courthouse. And I would agree with my colleague, Councillor Weir, in that when the presentation happened, my recollection of the original presentation of the Civic Trust, when they shared the vision for the courthouse, the vision was quite broad. It included many, many things. And what I understood was that as we got to a place of transferring, that vision would be honed and that there would be more consultation. I understood that there definitely would be more consultation. So then we have the discussion of the Visitor Information Center and the lease agreement because the transfer agreement hasn't happened yet. And I remember asking, I believe it was at it was at a staff meeting, was there public consultation? And my understanding at that point was that there was none, that the consultation was with the chamber and with the businesses and the members, but it wasn't with the folks who would be impacted in the neighborhood. Recognizing that I did understand that the Vic was potentially part of that whole vision of the courthouse. The challenge I have, and again, to speak to Councillor Weir's point, is that we as a council have been criticized significantly around transparency and accountability. And we have talked about the fact that we have tried to ensure that we consult and that there is information made available to our constituents, to our residents. This feels like it hasn't been smooth. But I also recognize very clearly that we are under a gun in terms of a time frame. And so while I do not want to jeopardize the transfer of the courthouse to the Civic Trust, I think that that is critical. It is an important part of our heritage and history, but it is not something that we as a council can hold on to. We can't afford it. Another entity needs to be the guardian of that building. I wish, though, that there was still an opportunity for Explore, for Civic Trust to meet with residents, to talk about what specifically are their concerns and how could we, Explore, Civic Trust, the town, mitigate those concerns. I recognize that some of them are really going to be challenging, but things like buses and parking, those are some things that we as a council could put some measures in place to ensure that it is least intrusive. The challenge is the timing, and I'm not sure how we could make that, whether or not we could establish that. But I truly believe that that consultation is a missing piece. I think about what we do as a PAC in terms of ensuring that any variance, any discussion is that there's notice to the people in the surrounding areas. I value that process. I think that that's just and fair. And I recognize we did have some extensive consultation, but I truly believed that we were going to have more consultation as we got down to the specifics of what the courthouse was going to entail. So that's my struggle, and I don't have a conclusion around it other than I need folks to understand that that's the dilemma I feel.
Thank you, Councillor Harlan. Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Worship. Well, as you know, I come from a tourism background, so I'm very supportive of a visitors information center. However, I've been perfectly clear for at least 2 to 3 months that this is not the location. If the transfer had have gone through to Civic Trust, then we wouldn't even have this on our agenda. It's on our agenda because it belongs to the town as of today. The town still owns the courthouse as of today. Has nothing to do with the transfer. The courthouse is still the town, and the town has certain rights to the responsibilities to the citizens of the area. Thus, Councillor Weir's point, thus, if we had have seen this, we should have had a consultation, not from Civic Trust, but from the town, because at this time, for May the 1st, It's still the town's property. It is not Civic Trust. I don't want it to hinder Civic Trust getting it, but if the transfer was through, we wouldn't even have this on our agenda because it wouldn't have anything to do with council. It would have to do with Civic Trust. So where it's on the agenda, we fairly have to follow our guidelines and do justice to the people, the residents, and the taxpayers of this town. And for me, as I said, I have been very vocal, and another counselor has been as well, that the Civic Center or the VIC could not be this year put in at the courthouse. And I've made that perfectly clear, and I stand by that. The unfortunate part is the timing, as we know, is of essence. But as I say, the thing that we have to remember is that this courthouse at this day belongs to the town. Does not belong to Civic Trust, does not belong to anybody yet. It still belongs to the town, which we are responsible for. And as a counselor responsible for the town, I have to take into consideration the respectful way that it would be treated. Thank you.
Councillor Hume. Councillor Gumshaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, or thank you, Steve. So last week I voted against this motion in our meeting that didn't count, and based on hearing from especially the letter from the Chamber of Commerce, but also the presentation from the Civic Trust. I mean, the VIC has been something that's dogged council for a long time. It used to be in this space, and then it went to that space, and one of the key founding principles of Explore St. Andrews was that they would take over the VIC. So trying to get the VIC off of the town books and into the hands of people who are experts in that area has been a challenge for at least a decade now. I'm a bit I'm a bit disappointed, I guess, or a bit resentful to be in this position at this late date. I feel like the people taking over the Civic Trust and also the neighbors, everybody had a responsibility to talk a little bit more. I'm not sure if it was our responsibility to poll the neighbors as to what was happening. The Civic Trust did do extensive consultations. At that point, that would have been the time for the neighbors to get in. I'm empathetic to these changes. I don't think buses will necessarily be a big issue in that part of town. I don't think that VICs, frankly, are really something that is going forward a growth sort of business. I mean, when I rode my bike across the country, I might have stopped in one or two visitor centers. Everything you need is on your phone. People aren't necessarily going to VICs these days. But because the VIC, as Mr. Boban mentioned earlier, seems to be such a key component of their vision for this site, and because they are doing such a great service to the town, taking over the courthouse, which I'm on record as saying we never should have taken over in the first place. It was a huge error. Then I'd be changing my vote this week. I think that we can't jeopardize those volunteers and the time they have in. And I'm sorry. I mean, you could kind of see this coming, but is it a counselor's job to get on the phone and call the neighbors? I don't know, but you could kind of see it coming. And now we're here at the last minute and we're faced with this difficult decision. And I don't really feel we should be in this position, frankly, but and here we are. So, long story short, I'll be changing my vote this week, and with apologies to the neighbors, voting that we support this agreement with Explore St. Andrews to operate the VIC at the courthouse. Thank you, your deputy acting motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gumshaw. Yeah, just a comment, I guess, 'cause I've heard it a couple times now, but the proposal for the VIC, again, it was presented to us several months ago from Civic Trust as part of their vision. And again, that was a proposal that council did accept at the time. So I think then would have been the time, if council had so chosen at the time, to do more public consultation with actual residents. Unfortunately, it sounds like we thought that had already happened. But it sounds like it didn't. But again, just wanted to clarify that point, that has been out there for us for some time now, so. Councillor Blanchard, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship.
Steve is fine.
Stig, I think you pointed out sort of the main point that I wanted to make, in that this was included in the presentations to council, and we've had at least a couple presentations to council on this. In general, I think council has been supportive of the Civic Trust taking over the courthouse, and this was included in those plans. So we were aware, it was there, and I understand where the residents are coming from, and I understand sort of the position we're in that this has come forward now where we still are technically we still have ownership of the courthouse, as was stated earlier. And again, as Councillor Gumichel has said, I sympathize with the residents to a certain extent, because it does sound like I said the consultation was done more with the business community and maybe a little less with the immediate residents. I would note too, though, some things that were presented to us by Mr. Junot when he presented on behalf of the Civic Trust. In terms of the VIC and some of the concerns that have been raised is around traffic and things of that nature. I believe Mr. Junot had said the VIC averaged, I think, at most 10 visitors an hour. So the concern around traffic, I think, can be mitigated. I don't really see this as a major issue, sort of in that area, given that, like I said, it's not a high traffic business, if you want to call it a business. It really isn't going to generate a huge amount of traffic. In terms of where we are with the lease and having to approve this lease now, I do see it as a step towards what was essentially accepted by council with regards to the transfer and the vision for the Civic Trust, and this was a part of that vision. So while I understand, and I understand what people are saying, what my other councillors are saying, it's not a position that we necessarily should be in. I would like to have seen the transfer have happened by now. Here we are, but at the same time, like you said, I supported the transfer to the Civic Trust. I supported the vision that they had, really from the beginning. I like what they were doing, and this to me is a step in that direction. So I wouldn't want to jeopardize that at this point in the game. So that's sort of my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm in an unusual situation where I kind of agree with everybody who's spoken here tonight. And that's not normal for me. I guess what tugs most at my heartstrings is what Councillor Blanchard and Councillor Gumichel have spoken on so eloquently. The need for something to happen with the courthouse, the need for something to happen with the Visitor Information Center, certainly weighs strongly in a vote for myself tonight. But I would ask that if it goes ahead, that staff be extremely vigilant in monitoring the traffic and the bylaw officer enforcing regulations up in that area to mitigate any undue congestion for citizens up there. So basically, that's where I sit, and I hope that we can all live in this community and be happy at the end of the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. That again is a very good point. Again, one that I think I would have stressed to staff depending on the outcome. But yes, we still have control with our bylaw officer and enforcing traffic regulations. So that is one step that the town can still help to mitigate any concerns if this does go forward. But I'm going to open it up again. Councillor Harland.
Thank you. I think it is important to, what I remember in the initial consultation that the Civic Trust did is that there was significant engagement by residents, and by residents who are who live around the courthouse. I think there was high engagement around that. And what I still would ask is that if there is agreement tonight to go forward with the lease agreement, that Civic Trust and Explore still engage in a conversation with the neighbors. I couldn't agree more with my councillor colleague, Councillor Bennett, that we do need to work collaboratively and collectively, and that means ongoing dialogue. And while the residents' concerns have been expressed, I think it's important that there be ongoing dialogue with the people in the immediate area to understand and to try to mitigate to the best of our ability what their concerns are. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Harland. Go around a second time. Any other comments, council? Seeing none, Councillor Weir, right under the wire.
So I just want to briefly talk about this consultation process, and someone mentioned they felt maybe taken advantage of or something. That I feel we're just weren't given enough information, or wasn't treated with enough seriousness or importance to the people in the area. I'm a great believer in personal property rights. I know the good of the community overrules the good of the individual, but we have to recognize that individuals do have rights. And we have taken a lot of flack on transparency. I don't think in many cases council really deserved the flack they got. We were walked into it and ended up getting painted with a brush we didn't deserve. And this is almost another situation, the same thing. And I feel bad about it. I guess that's all I can say.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Anything else from councillors? Councillor Blanchard?
Yeah, maybe just one last point. I think Mr. Boban raised another good point during his presentation, and in case the public missed it, the courthouse, that area is zone institutional. So again, it's different than if we were taking perhaps rezoning, or we were changing a residential, something that was residential or right in the middle of a residential community that wasn't zoned in the way it is. I think it's zoned that way for a reason. It has been a working, like I said, courthouse for a very long time, up until very recently. So there has been traffic there. There has been all those things. There has been parking needs in that area for a very long time in its entire history. So I think that was a good point to raise, and something that the public needs to be aware of. And Councillor Weir again made a very good point there at the end. We really do have to look at an analysis here of what really benefits the community as a whole. And certainly, do what we can to mitigate for individuals any impacts that it might have. But for the community as a whole, I think for something to jeopardize the transfer agreement with the Civic Trust, that would have a major impact on the community. I think we've all had conversations about the courthouse and really the town's, I'll say, inability perhaps to manage that, but really what it does to the community, and what we all agree we need to do. It needs to be taken on, or we've looked to have that taken on by another entity for a very long time. For that to be jeopardized, I would think that would have a major impact on the community. So those are the points I wanted to raise. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. There's no other comments. Mr. McKinney, you don't have anything to add or? All right, we will call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
That is 5. Anyone opposed? Counselor Weir? Okay. Thank you, council, for that discussion. And again, yeah, I would like to just remind residents in the area again that the town still does have a bylaw officer. We still do regulate traffic. So again, if there are concerns throughout the summer, I would just suggest, again, please reach out to Town Hall and make staff aware of those, so we can keep record of them and follow up on them. Okay, Councillor Weir, back to you again.
This is reference number EBC 260413, courthouse upgrades for the Visitor Information Center. Council has approved the use of the courtroom and washrooms at the Charlotte County Courthouse by Explore St. Andrews for the operation of Visitor Information Center. Staff are seeking permission to complete 2 projects: construction of a gravel parking area on the Parr Street side of the property between the jail and the road. Some excavation and fill are required to ensure water does not endanger the buildings. A wooden ramp to the door on the same side of the building for accessibility. The operations manager has obtained a quote to complete both projects for a total of
The total, the 2 together would be $35,925.
$35,925.
We're
If I may interrupt, before you get to the next part there, Counselor. Staff would like to divide those 2 items, the parking lot from the ramp. The ramp itself is $2,000 is our estimated cost for building the ramp, the accessibility ramp. We would like council to consider that cost, the $2,000 for the ramp. However, the parking area, which is quoted at $33,925, council would, or staff would recommend against council moving with that. Staff had originally thought that the cost would be somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000, and they thought that this cost was much too high for what they were looking to do, and they would strike that from the recommendation. The only reason it's still in here is because this item has been passed around from week to week a little bit through different changes, and didn't seem right as clerk to strike the item entirely, but to offer a recommendation when we came to it. So the recommended motion at this point would be to approve construction of an accessibility ramp at the courthouse for an estimated cost of $2,000.
okay, so we would need an amendment for that.
No motion has been made yet. I stopped him before he did that.
Move it yet.
Fair
As
enough.
long as we write it in and say the right words.
So staff are seeking permission to complete 1 project. And that 1 project would be the number 2 on here becomes number 1. Construction of a wooden ramp to the door on the same side of the building as the proposed parking lot for accessibility. The operations manager has obtained a quote to complete this project for $2,000. So the motion becomes that council approve construction of an accessibility ramp at the courthouse for a cost of $2,000. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Seconder, Councillor Gumashell. Questions, council? I do think the quote for the parking area was excessively high. I think that's a wise recommendation that we hold off on that. If there's no other comments, though, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, sorry?
Comment. Also holding off on the parking gives chance for more consultation to happen before it does happen. So there'll be a chance to have drawings, talk to the neighbors, everybody can see what the exact plan is rather than the sketches we had. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Gumashell. Any other comments? If not, we will call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Aye, that's everyone. Thank you, Councillor Weir. I believe you've got the next one again.
This is EBC 260409, Passamaquoddy Lodge Land Agreement. Council has supported efforts of the Passamaquoddy Lodge to seek provincial assistance to build a new facility in St. Andrews. On March 26th, Province New Brunswick announced its Stronger Care for Seniors plan, including a $993 million investment in the 2026-27 budget, a new 60-bed facility for the Passamaquoddy Lodge was part of the news release. An agreement is before council which will provide Passamaquoddy Lodge with the option of first refusal for a portion of undeveloped town property within PIDs 15164486, 1325, 471, 1521, 5874, and 1521, 5858, with a requested size allotment of 13 acres. The town agrees to sell the property at a cost of $1 plus HST. The term of the agreement is 3 years. And it certainly gives me great pleasure to make the motion that the council for the town of St. Andrews accept a 3-year agreement with Passamaquoddy Lodge, providing an option of first refusal for a parcel of land the size of 13 acres at a cost of $1 plus HST. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Seconded by Councillor Harland. Any questions on this one, council? I just see the gigantic grin from across the room here. No comments, council? We'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion? That is unanimous. Thank you, council. So we're back to you again, Councillor Weir.
This is EBC 260414, St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce MAP sponsorship. The St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce is producing their annual map and directory brochure and have requested a sponsorship from the town in the amount of $2,000. For this sponsorship, the town's logo will feature on the maps, and the chamber will cover the cost of design and production of the large maps that are displayed at the town hall and the wharf. The town has sponsored the maps in recent years. 2025, $2,000, which came out of the tourism levy, and 2024 of $3,000, which came out of the general advertising town budget. 2023, it was $300. So the motion is that the council for the town of St. Andrews authorize sponsorship of the St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce map and directory in the amount of $2,000. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Seconder, Councillor Heenan. Any comments on this motion, council? I believe the maps are already out, are they not?
Yeah.
No comments. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Everyone, thank you, Councillor Weir. I believe you got one more to go.
This is reference number EBC 260504. Letter of support for Friends of Greenock. Friends of Greenock made a presentation at the regular council meeting on March 16th, 2026. The presentation advised of the current condition of the building and the group's efforts to preserve the building as a heritage property and valuable component of the town. Council asked at the time how they could help support the group. Chris Derwin, the member presenting, advised they did not know at the time. Staff later contacted Mr. Derwin to follow up on the discussion and offered the drafting of a letter of support from council the group would include when applying for funding and other considerations for Greenock. A letter was drafted and sent to the Friends of Greenock for review and input. The final version is attached. Staff recommends council approve the signing and sending of the letter of support. Accordingly, the motion is that the council for the town of St. Andrews authorize Councillor Neal as acting mayor to sign the proposed letter of support for the Friends of Greenock. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Seconded by Councillor Bennett. Any comments on this, council? We did have a presentation by them not long ago, did we not? If there's no questions, I will call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Nope. All right, we will get that letter signed and submitted. That takes us to Recreation and Environment Committee, Councillor Gumashell.
Thank you, your deputy worship. Reference number RE 260507 dated March 4th, submitted by myself, and the subject is Zamboni quote results. And the background reads, the operations manager has completed a quote request through Canoe Procurement for a new ice resurfacer, also known as a Zamboni. One supplier was able to provide a quote, Saunders Equipment Limited out of Fredericton, a Zamboni 526 ice resurfacer front dump, Zamboni blade changing assistant add-on. The Zamboni at a price of $138,055.25, and the add-on $4,268 for a subtotal of $142,323.25. And all arena purchases are tax exempt. The amount of $167,000 was budgeted for the purchase of a Zamboni. The operations manager believes the town can sell the current machine for more than the vendor offered for a trade-in at $2,500. So the motion reads that the council for the town of St. Andrews authorize the purchase of a Zamboni 526 ice resurfacer front dump and Zamboni blade changing assistant through Saunders Equipment Limited at a cost of $142,323.25, as shown on the quote dated April 23rd, 2026, and I would happily make that motion, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Gumashell. I saw a seconder, Councillor Heenan. Again, nice to see another capital purchase coming in under budget. I hope we have the operations manager to thank for that here. Any comments, council? Councillor Weir.
Be a typo in that it says the amount of $167,000 was budgeted for the purchase of the
Yeah.
sidewalk machine.
Yeah, but
I don't know if you changed that way as you read it, Councillor Gumashell.
yes, that was so good you just picked that up.
Smooth, eh?
Yes.
Thanks, Mark.
The dollar amount is correct, just the item is wrong. I just had to double check it wasn't the same dollar amount, and then I would have had to look it up.
And Councillor Gumashell did read it.
Yeah, he read it right.
Okay. Any other comments, council? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? No. Okay. Now we're over to planning and community development. I believe is Councillor Harland.
Mhm.
Over to you.
Thank you. So this is reference number PCD 260409, and the subject is proposed bylaw MP 20-02-03, amendment to the secondary municipal plan. The background is as follows. A development application for 246 Water Street was received for the construction of a two-story, 816 square foot addition to the rear of the building. The addition would largely be garage space, but would include a small office and indoor stair access to an existing apartment. A public presentation was given on Monday, March 16th. PAC provided a letter of support dated March 20th. Council granted leave for first reading by title only at the April 7th regular council meeting. At the request of Councillor Weir, staff contacted the residential neighbor to the property to be developed. Concerns regarding water runoff were noted by the planner and will be addressed by terms in the building permitting process. Staff recommends council grant leave for second reading in its entirety and third reading by title only of the proposed amendment. And the first motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grant leave for the second reading in its entirety of proposed bylaw MP 20-02-03, a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-02. And I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Harlan. And seconder, Councillor Heenan. Any comments on this, Council?
I would also,
McKinnon?
Your Worship, I would also advise that planner Alexander Gopin is on Zoom with us as well, if he wanted to chime in, or if you
Mr.
had
Gopin
questions
is
that
there. If we
he
have any questions, Council?
needed to answer.
I will add that I did have a conversation with the neighbor just a day or two ago. And he expressed to me that he had no concerns with the project other than, again, the potential groundwater runoff, which again, staff and the planners have stated they are going to address through the building permit process. So. Councillor Heenan?
And as all our plans that we try to do, due diligence was done and we had an open house for objections and there was none.
We did,
So,
yes.
Yes.
If there's no other comments, I will call the question. All those in favor of passing second reading? Anyone opposed? I will read the bylaw for you in its entirety. Bylaw number MP 20-02-03, a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-02, being the secondary municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. Be it enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews as follows. One is bylaw number MP 20-02, the secondary municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews is amended by adding the following after Schedule B. Schedule C, number 1, notwithstanding any policy or proposal in Schedule B, PID 150-49810 is exempt from the floor area requirements of proposals 6A, 6B, and 6C to allow for an addition with a ground floor area of no more than 820 square feet to the building spanning 246 to 256 Water Street. Number 2 is that the existing pedestrian access to the west of 246 Water Street is maintained to the satisfaction of the development officer post-construction. 3 is the exterior treatment and roof line of the addition match the exterior treatment and roof line of the existing building to the satisfaction of the development officer. And 4, the 820 square foot addition on PID 150-49810 to the building spanning 246 to 256 Water Street shall not be used for calculating massing for approval under MP 20-02 of another building on the block. And this is read the second time on the 4th day of May, 2026. Back to you, Councillor Harland.
Thank you. And the second motion is that the Council for the Town of St. Andrews grant leave for the third and final reading by title only a proposed bylaw MP 20-02-03, a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-02. And I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Harlan. We got a second there. Councillor Heenan, any comments on this motion? Being none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of third reading?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, so read this by title, bylaw number MP 20-02-03, a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-02, being the secondary municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And this is third and final reading on the 4th day of May 2026. Okay, back to you, Councillor Harland.
Thank you. This is reference number PCD 260410, and the subject is Henry Hansen subdivision. The background is as follows. Henry Hansen has been negotiating the sale of 2 parcels of property along Bar Road to the town. The following steps must be taken before the town can enter a purchase agreement with Mr. Hansen. A subdivision plan was filed with Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. Council must give its approval to the tentative subdivision plan before the development officer can review and sign the final plan. As purchaser of the property, the town will also be acquiring Rose Lane. Council must assent to receive the road and advise intent to improve the road at a future date to the requirements of the subdivision bylaw. The motion is as follows, whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended a location for streets at their March 2026 meeting as per Section 88 of the Community Planning Act. Council may assent to the tentative subdivision plan, Henry Hansen Subdivision 2026 for PID 01325505 as per Section 88 of the Community Planning Act. Council resolves to exempt the proposed Rose Lane as shown on the tentative subdivision plan, Henry Hansen Subdivision 2026 or 2026 for PID 01325505 from the Standards of Subdivision Bylaw 23-05, as council will be able in the near future provide the proposed subdivision with street or other facilities that meet the standards of the subdivision bylaw. And council further resolves to assent to subdivision plan Harry Hansen Subdivision 2026, subject to a requirement that the present landowner enter into a hold harmless agreement with the town of St. Andrews prior to the assent on the final plan of subdivision or the transfer of land. And I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. Seconder, Councillor Bennett. Comments, council? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion as read?
Aye.
That is everyone. Second part to that one. That is it. Thank you very much, council. That is the end of motions and bylaws. Any new business? Mr. McKinnon, nothing?
No, sir.
It takes us to question period. Start online.
No questions on Zoom or email.
Okay. Any questions from the audience tonight?
I'm Susan Sims. I'm going to say everything I want to say, just to make it more economically time-wise. And if you choose to answer, maybe at the end. Okay, first of all, I wanted to know how the noise was measured all of these years up till now without a machine to measure it. Another question I have is the visitor center was originally here and the council chambers were in the town hall. And is there any reasonable excuse why they couldn't be transposed for this season in the consideration of time and money and so on, considering that it has been that way in the past and it worked. Another comment question was about the food truck at Kira. It said it's there from 4 to 8. Obviously, it's probably operational from 4 to 8, which means there's a setup time beforehand and there's a takedown and removal time afterwards. Wondered if that is built into the time that they're allowed and who's going to monitor when they're there to set up and when they're there and the time spent to take down and be removed, as that would be occurring after working hours. My comments about the courthouse with zero rent, who's responsible for the heat, power, water, insurance, and property taxes, who determines the scope of activity that will take place there. Councillor Gumichel stated that VICs are basically on the way out, that they're not utilized. Everybody does everything on their phone. So I question the merit of going through this procedure at all and the expense and time and energy and the change to a historic building to put a VIC in there if it isn't going to be if the importance is going to be there to justify what's going to go into it, who's going to facilitate what's going to go on at the VIC, who has input into what the scope of what they do is, the hours that they're run. If the numbers that were put out of 10 people a day or 10 people an hour on average, that would be 80 people a day, which would average about 2,400 people a month. It's supposed to be a 6-month from May to October, which would be 14,400 visitors. If they work 12-hour days, that would be up to 21,600 visitors based on those numbers. How many numbers, how many people would be considered to make it worthwhile? And if there are only 10 people an hour coming on average, is it worthwhile to put a parking lot in at all? Is it necessary for 10 people an hour? Also, there is there was, I don't know if I think it's grown over with grass, but there was also some parking already in existence on Parr Street that they used to use for bringing prisoners into the courthouse from the back way. So I don't know if that existing parking still exists or if it's viable or if that was taken into consideration when parking was being discussed. I was also wondering about Councillor or Mr. Neal reaching out to the resident next door to the expansion on Water Street. Did you reach out to them or did they reach out to you? And the last comment was about Rose Lane, that the town would remain responsible for Rose Lane, but I'm guessing that Rose Lane extends beyond the parcel of land that is in consideration for the town. And I just wanted to clarify that even though there's more Rose Lane than what is right next door to the parcel of land in consideration, that the town is responsible for all of Rose Lane the whole way through. That's it.
Okay. Thank you much, Mrs. Sims. I think I've got them all written down here. The noise measurement up to now
That's the reason for the update.
is basically why we are updating that bylaw and purchasing the decibel meter, because up until now, it's basically been, it's kind of been discretionary. So it has to be, we have to document it in order to enforce it. And at the same time, it's when, say, the bylaw officer shows up. So if they get there while it's actually happening, then they can do something. Moving forward, they'll be able to actually measure it, see if it's outside of the new limits in the bylaw, and then take action. So that was the reason for the decibel meters. The VIC location back here and us going back to town hall. I think the short answer to that is we just wouldn't have space in town hall. Again, Mr. McKinnon can confirm that, but I don't think even just the size of the current council would fit in the current boardroom at town hall. So let alone,
Correct. That's correct.
yeah.
Yes, technically our council is supposed to be 10 seats. We have a table that fits 5 or 6 people right now comfortably. You certainly couldn't have, historically, the previous council, I believe, was 5 members,
No, it was 6
6 members.
6 in the mayor. Yep.
And I'm not sure how far back that would go.
It would go back a while. Again, it would be
Yeah.
hard pressed to get in there, and then
But you wouldn't be able to have any
there would be no room
an attendance for a gallery.
for a gallery.
Everything would have to be online only.
It would be very tight for CHCO to broadcast it, which is something that previous councils never did. So that was partially the reason as I understand it, that we moved here.
I'm saying about the current room available I would assume it's a different room. I would assume the old room is now the CAO's office, and I'm pretty sure you've been in the CAO's office and seen how well he uses up all the space. It would take some work, and so this is a more comfortable option, not just for sitting at a table with council, but as Councillor Neil said, for cameras and equipment, for the gallery to attend. The VIC, again, is something that I've said before. It's not, but you asked a question about who's in charge of the VIC, who determines the scope of their activity, who facilitates them. That is not the town. It is Explore St. Andrews. It is not a town project. It is a project that is chosen to be continued by Explore St. Andrews. So they would also have to agree to have their staff in this place and to choose this as a different location. But those are some of the concerns that we would have in the change. This is their first year of 100% taking it over.
Yeah. Prior to that, it was the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. So it hasn't been a town-run entity for a while. I was going to get to that. I'm jumping ahead now. So the food trucks, it is a good question that I don't know if Mr. McKinnon has an answer to the setup and takedown time, but that is something we can certainly look into. I would, again, assume that would be our bylaw officer. Again, that would make sure they're complying with the agreement that they're signing, the peddler's agreement. Yep. Yeah, he works, well, he's not out and about, but if we call him, he will respond. Yes.
That's right.
Courthouse heat and lights. Again, the town is presently paying for those, are we not?
We are.
Which is, again, part of the reason that we are looking for someone to take it over. So if it gets, yes. Yes, if we enter into that agreement with Civic Trust, they will be taking over all the expenses for the courthouse. I think we touched on the VIC things again. Again, it's Explorers running. I will mention again that it is just a trial for this year. To your question about the numbers and whatnot, again, Explore does present to us annually. So, I mean, we can easily get those numbers and compare them to previous years as to how well the VIC has been attended. And that might, again, factor into their decision with Civic Trust to continue. If not, again, if it's not well utilized because it is in the center of town or for whatever reasons, then again, Explore might decide that it's not worth their while to hire staff and to run it.
If I may just add to that,
Sure.
Councillor Neil, and Explore St. Andrews is not required to operate the VIC. So if it becomes something that is not viable, it can be closed down at any time because it's something that is optional for them. They're not required to do it. For example, Explore St. Andrews, before they decided to choose a location, they first decided whether or not it was a project they wanted to continue in the first place. They had to decide as a board to continue the VIC operation and then to find a home for it. So if it comes to the point where it's no longer useful to them, then they do have the option to close it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Parking, again, as Councilor Gumashaw, I think, pointed out, that's something that council will still have input into and can determine whether or not we want to go ahead with that.
If I may, Counselor, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
That is the location we were looking at with the paving.
I was going
on
to say,
par.
on
Yeah,
par,
that is
yes.
the location where the parking lot quote was for.
As far as the neighbor on Water Street, we met in the grocery store. Yep, we ran into each other and he pulled me aside and as far as Rose Lane, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the portion of land that we are considering purchasing does basically extend the whole length of Rose Lane.
That's correct. Rose Lane does not extend outside of that parcel of land.
Yeah, it basically goes from the Bar Road right to the end of it. Okay.
You have one other question, change to the historical building, number 5.
Okay, I missed that. Again, I think Civic Trust has touched on that as well, that
Yeah.
there are no permanent changes to the courthouse as far as infrastructure goes, the way it's set up. Basically, the VIC would be temporary displays, not infringing on the historical character of it at all.
The only physical change would be, if you've been in the courthouse, there's the wooden wall that separates the gallery area from the forward area. On the side next where the side door is, when you come in, to be able to get back into that open area where the temporary information will be for the VIC, they are looking at shortening that wall by about a foot. And that's just a matter of trimming off at the wall section and pulling it forward so you can't see any difference in the actual, to allow wheelchair access to the washroom.
Yeah, it's for accessibility from both directions, so. Okay. Any other questions?
Just kidding. I actually have one or two questions or comments. With regards to the Civic Center and having the VIC up there, and there was some concerns about consultations with the neighbors. I don't think it would be inappropriate that part of the lease, if granted for the 6-month lease, that at the end of the 6 months, that they then go back out to the community to get feedback on how things went and whether or not they have suggestions on improvements or issues that they had during that time. And even a letter to go out to the immediate area saying we are putting the VIC there. It is a 6-month trial, and we will be coming to you at the end of the 6 months to get your feedback and further consultation to see where we can possibly make improvements. Just as a suggestion that you could kind of kill two birds with one stone by letting the residents know that this is temporary and we appreciate their assistance. And then on the other end, we're going to be coming back around to get their input. So anyways, that's one comment. The second one has to do with today being the last day for the councillors before the election. And I just wanted to thank you guys all for this term and what you've done. A lot of you are new, and people who haven't sat in that type of seat before maybe do not understand that it takes your first term to get your sea legs under you and understand what laws and everything that's going on and how to navigate this job. And I just want to say that I think it means a lot, at least to me, that you guys can admit when maybe things could have been better, or be willing to listen or stop something. And I really appreciate that, because it means that you're working for the residents. And that's what you're prioritizing and not just pushing through the work. You could come, you could do nothing and push everything off to future counselors, and your life would be much easier. We all know that, and people have done that, and you've chosen not to do that. And again, that shows a lot of character for the people that are around the table. And again, thank you very much for that. And the last thing is it's a bit for a bit of transparency, because this is the last board meeting. The next one probably won't happen until July. And I think it would be nice to kind of explain to people what happens and how this town continues to function between now and July, just to kind of put it on the record and make people feel comfortable that things are taken care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I
Do you want
can
me to
touch
take
on
that?
that, Mac, sorry, Mr. McKinnon, if you want me to cover that, or,
Well, what I was gonna say is, we had a meeting this morning, so we only just found out today. And I haven't even advised the rest of council other than Councillor Neal. So that's something that I have to do, and it's on my list of things to do. So I've also drafted a news release before coming here this evening that even the CAO hasn't seen yet. But we are going to communicate that as soon as possible, so that folks know what is happening. And like I said, we just found out. So, and I'm still technically waiting to hear from the Department of Local Government that I can share that right away, because they haven't answered that question yet.
and I'll just add, we do have one other meeting coming up this week on Thursday.
We'll hear you all again. Yeah, say all that again.
All right, any other questions? If not, we are on to councillor comments. Any comments, council? Councillor Heenan?
Once again, I just want to say that tomorrow will be a hard day for this town, because we're saying goodbye to a very good friend of ours and a very good friend to the town. And I think it's very appropriate that this town has come out and done everything they possibly can to show the respect that Kate really does deserve. And I just want to say, on behalf of council, I hope I can speak for council, that we are truly blessed, or we're truly blessed to have her among us, and her presence will never go. And so I just want to say tomorrow is going to be a tough day, but it's something like everything that we have to do. Sometimes it's tough. And so I'd like to thank the citizens of the town for all of their respect for Kate and her whole family. So thank you very much.
Councillor Heenan? Anyone else? No, I don't have any other comments to add. I was basically going to touch on what Councillor Heenan just did. So we do have a closed session to go to. I'll read that motion. That at 8:21 PM, council move into closed session per Local Governance Act, Section 68-1-C, information that could cause financial loss or gain to a person or the local government, or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement or contract. I have a mover for that motion, Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Heenan. All those in favor of going to closed session? Thank you. We'll give you guys a moment. Thank you very much, guys, for coming.